Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 14th of December, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So kicking off today, I have an exciting little campaign that I'm doing with the EtherFi team here until December 24th. So basically you can participate in this little Christmas contest with EtherFi. All you have to do is get your submissions in by midnight GMT on December 24th. Now you can see here what the criteria is. You basically submit a short video or tweet thread explaining why you love Ethereum, why decentralization is important for the health of the network, and what you've personally done to support it. Now, submissions will be rated by people from the EtherFi community, solo stakers from Operation Solo Staker, and of course yours truly. And there's a bunch of evaluation criteria here, as well as more details in the thread. Now, the reason why you would want to do this is because there are some great prizes up for grabs, including some DApp nodes, some staked ETH, and hardware wallets, and more. So you can read the full details of this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below, and all the prizes are actually listed here as well. But I'm really looking forward to seeing all of the submissions to this. And you can see here there's like an AI-generated SasalSanta here. Doesn't look anything like me in the face, but hey, it's got the hat and the beard going, and the muscles definitely the same, right? But yeah, as I said, you can go check out the full details here. And yeah, get your submissions in by December 24th, and I think that the prizes will be announced on December 26th. So definitely a full-on kind of Christmas special campaign here. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing what kind of responses we get to this, because obviously I can articulate why I love Ethereum and why decentralization is important, and what I'm personally doing to support it. But I would love to see what everyone else is doing, because I think that there are a lot of unsung kind of people within the Ethereum ecosystem that really do understand Ethereum. They understand why decentralization is important, but they may not be someone that have been highlighted before. People may not be aware of their work, and I will be covering the winners on the refuel once they're announced, because I want to make sure that those people are highlighted and spotlighted there. So yeah, anyway, I'll link this in the YouTube description below. You can go check out the full details here. All right, so I saw this tweet circulating the other day from Fred Krueger here. He took a picture of the Wall Street Journal newspaper, which is hilarious because, I mean, yeah, it's a newspaper in 2023. But basically, it's titled, "A Spot Ether ETF Wouldn't Necessarily Follow Bitcoin." And Fred said, "Don't count on an ETH ETF, agree completely with this." But then Scott Johnson, who has been basically talking a lot about ETFs for a while now, quote tweeted this and said, "Out of all the reasons an ETH Spot ETF may not be approved, and there are a few, you can rest assured that this won't be one of them, since none are currently being set up to offer staking yield. This article is addressing an issue that does not exist right now." And that's the TR for the article. It's basically talking about how Ethereum is proof of stake, and a staked ETF is very different to a normal spot ETF. And like, I totally agree with that, but as Scott said, this is not an issue. Like the ETF applications for an ETH ETF are not for a staked ETH ETF. It's for a normal spot ETH ETF, the exact same one that BTC is getting, right? So it's kind of weird that someone would write this article and not make note of that as well, which is just bizarre to me. But then Scott actually goes on. He goes on to say what his reasons are, what he thinks the reasons are that the spot ETH ETF may not be approved. He says here, there's no precedent 19B-4 approval for a futures ETH product, less developed, newer CME market, and probably a couple of others. Look, I don't know. I feel like, obviously I'm going to be biased here by saying this, but I feel like there's not really going to be much pushback on approving a spot ETH ETF. I've said this before on the refuel, but basically all you have to do as an issuer is copy paste, basically almost one for one what you have for the BTC spot ETF, and then just submit that, and then the SDC should be fine with that, because ETH has had a CME futures market for quite a while. Yes, it hasn't been as long as BTC, but it's had it for quite a while. The SEC just approved the futures ETFs for ETH, and they just lost a court case a few months ago against Grayscale, where basically the judge said that the fact is you approved the BTC futures ETFs, but you're denying a spot BTC ETF. Doesn't really make any sense. And obviously BlackRock has also filed for a spot ETH ETF, and they're not known for filing things unless they think that they can get them through. So I would still put the chances of an ETH spot ETF being approved by next year pretty high. And I did mention the other day that there are a couple of the issuers that have a deadline in May, so we may see it as early as May in 2024. But it might get pushed out later than that. But that is the kind of current final deadline for a few of them. out there. And it would actually be quite insane if we got a spot ETH ETF in May, because that would mean that within the span of a year, we went from Gary Gensler basically saying that ETH is a security to him approving a spot ETH ETF, right? Like that just a crazy turn of events, but also it goes back to what I've been saying about how the SEC is just in a very weakened position these days because of their court case losses. And, you know, I really do believe they're going to lose their suit against Coinbase, which would basically make them lose their suit against Binance and Kraken, because they're basically the same lawsuits. And, you know, if that were to happen, I mean, that's just like game over, really. And you know, it's kind of funny because there are a lot of people who say, well, the SEC is going to be hostile towards crypto as long as Democrats are at the helm in the US. And I'm like, yeah, it's a yes and no, because as we've seen, the SEC can be basically neutered, or a lot of their rhetoric can be neutered if taken to court, because the courts obviously have to side with the law, and the SEC is not following the law. The courts have basically told them that. It's like, you're not following the law. You're basically acting as kind of like your own little agency, thinking that you can do whatever you want, and also call them arbitrary and capricious, which, from what I've read from my lawyer friends on Twitter, is definitely a very harsh thing to say to a regulator. But that's all, I guess, like, for next year, because I think next year is going to be crazy for so many different reasons, guys. You know, you have the BTC ETF being approved, you have the Bitcoin halvening, you have the ETH Spot ETF probably being approved, right? You have the election year in the US, which is always a crazy time. You have the Fed saying today that they're pretty much done raising rates, and they're going to start cutting next year. You have the general market heating up. Like, I don't know, the stars are aligning for 2024, guys. Like, I don't know if you guys feel that like I do, but I definitely feel it. And I felt it for quite a while. I've been talking about this for months now, but really, it just keeps getting better and better. And I do think that we could see all-time highs on Bitcoin and ETH by Q2 next year. I think I originally said the second half of next year, but this ETF stuff has really just brought it all forward. And so I do think it's a possibility to see all-time highs by Q2. But hey, if it happens in Q3, who cares, right? And I'm not even talking about all of the, I guess, crypto native or crypto specific catalysts that we're all excited about, like Denkun next year, obviously, potentially Petra next year as well, as network upgrades, continued layer 2 upgrades, you know, Eigenlayer going live, a bunch of other layer 2s dropping their tokens and stuff like that. So there's so much happening, guys, so much crazy stuff happening. And you know I'll be here to cover it all for you. But yeah, just wanted to kind of highlight this and kind of squash some concerns around this. This article was just talking about the possibility of a staked ETH ETF, which isn't even hasn't been filed for, and I don't expect it to be filed for a little while. And there are definitely unique concerns that don't apply to normal spot ETFs. So yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on that one there. All right, so something I came across with relation to EtherFi was a screenshot that they posted on Twitter here, where you can see over the past week where the ETH has gone across all the different staking service providers here. So you can see that EtherFi is number 3, only behind Kiln and Ether Capital. And you can actually, funny enough, see that Lido has actually lost ETH this past week. So they lost 16,000 ETH this past week, whereas EtherFi has gained 6,000. Now, EtherFi is, one of the newer players, one of the smaller players, but I did want to add some context here, is that I think the way EtherFi has done their, I wouldn't call it a vampire attack, but has done their kind of like incentives and growth incentives is really ingenious, because what EtherFi is doing is that you put your ETH in, you get your LST, your ETH, but then you're also farming any potential kind of like EtherFi points and Eigenlayer kind of points, which maybe eventually could result in like an airdrop of a token or something. And Eigenlayer currently has a cap on the LSTs that can be put into them, and they're raising that cap, I think, over next week. Yeah, they're raising that cap next week, but that cap only applies to the LSTs. The Beacon Chain ETH, so the normal kind of like solo staked ETH, there is no cap on that, right? So what EtherFi is doing is that they're taking this ETH in, and then they're restaking it with Eigenlayer using the Beacon Chain ETH part, which is not capped, and spinning up Eigenpods. So they're not going through the LST part, so they're able to get around that cap, and people are depositing in with EtherFi because they obviously want to farm Eigenlayer, and this is a way to do it. So I really do think it's an ingenious little way of basically doing it's not really a direct vampire attack, but basically growing really quickly and taking ETH away from other services because of that. And I did say the cap's going to be lifted next week, but it's going to get filled up again, guys. Like, there is so much demand for restaking out there. It's crazy. And then, as I said, those caps only apply to the LSTs. Beacon Chain ETH is not capped. So EtherFi can keep taking in ETH and keep doing this, which I think is just really, really cool. And I think it's a really great way of growing. Now, I honestly understand, I obviously understand that there's concerns around this and there's risks associated with it. And I'm not trying to say that you should go ape in all your ETH because you could potentially get some nice rewards here. Just be aware of the risks, of course. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that because I just thought it was a really great way to do these things here. But yeah, anyway, you can go check out the screenshot if you want. It's got a list of all the LSTs. It's actually from a Dune Analytics dashboard by Hildobby that I've highlighted before, which is also linked here. But yeah, I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so there's been a lot of talk about liquidity fragmentation and I guess like UX fragmentation and ecosystem fragmentation within the L2 space lately. And those of you who have been listening to the Refuel for quite a while now, and those of you who pay attention to what's happening in the L2 space, you guys know that this is a temporary issue and is something that's going to get solved one way or another. And there are already lots of solutions in place. And it's also really just like a popular FUD narrative for detractors to say. It doesn't really match with reality. But what I wanted to highlight is how Polygon is actually doing this. So Tim Robinson here on Twitter shared a little snippet from how Polygon is actually doing their interoperability across all of their chains that are going to be part of Polygon Superchain, right? All the zkEVMs or zk chains that are going to be part of Polygon Superchain. So basically what they're doing, and you can read in this screenshot here that Tim shared, they've got something called the interop layer. And what this does is it facilitates secure and seamless cross-chain messaging within the Polygon ecosystem. It abstracts the complexity of cross-chain communication and makes the whole Polygon network feel like a single chain to users by enabling shared access to native Ethereum assets. Cross-chain bridges typically require users to mint synthetic versions of Ethereum tokens, which is obviously a UX nightmare. The interop layer offers a shared bridge to Ethereum and allows seamless cross-chain transfers of native Ethereum assets. And the interop layer can support near-instant and atomic cross-chain transactions, a core part of the vision of unified liquidity of Polygon 2.0. So essentially, as I just said and as I just read off here, any Polygon CDK chain that's been built and is plugged into the Polygon ecosystem and is using the same proving architecture. So basically Polygon Superchain, all of those can interoperate with each other and tap into the same liquidity pool. It's basically a liquidity layer that just sits there and then it just interoperates with every single chain that's part of that. So you could have 1,000, let's just say, Polygon chains, Polygon zkEVM or zk whatever chains, all interoperating with each other seamlessly in a unified fashion. Like that just completely solves the issue, right? And this is only one solution. There are multiple solutions here. And then people will bring up, what about going doing interoperability between the different super chains? It's like, yes, okay, that will be possible too. It's already possible via bridging infrastructure, but we can do better than that, and we will. There are things like shared sequences. There's also a way for each of these projects to actually integrate it into their tech stack themselves. So essentially, for example, if OP Stack or Optimism chains wanted to interact with Polygon chains, Optimism could integrate the Polygon prover into the OP Stack, and then they could having a shared prover like that would mean that, from my understanding, it would be able to enable that interoperability between the two ecosystems. Now, obviously, we don't know exactly how this is all going to play out in the end game and what standards are going to be adopted and what it's all going to look like. But really, if you have the thesis like I do, that there's going to be a few big superchain winners, and within those superchains, they're all going to be as interoperable as Ethereum, as everything built on Ethereum L1 is, then this completely, nullifies the all of the concerns, which I think a lot of these concerns are not real concerns, but some of them are. But it basically alleviates these concerns around interoperability and fragmenting liquidity and fragmenting UX, which I love. And last point I'll say on this as well, which is something that's been annoying me lately, is that people on Twitter love to say that, no one's going to bridge to Arbitrum, or no one's going to bridge to Optimism, or no one's going to bridge to Polygon's zkEVM. And then it's like, what do you mean no one's going to bridge there? How do you think people get to these chains to begin with? They go from a centralized exchange, right? So if you want to go from ETH on a centralized exchange to ETH on Arbitrum or ETH on Optimism or ETH on Polygon, you just select that when you withdraw your assets from a centralized exchange. And obviously not all centralized exchanges support all L2s yet, but they will. Like that's just a time thing. It's going to happen over time. And that's the same flow as them withdrawing to Ethereum mainnet or them withdrawing to another L1. So that FUD is just, that makes no sense to me, because technically going from a centralized exchange to one of these these chains is bridging. And I know people will say, oh, well, what about bridging from ETH L1? It's like the future is not users being on ETH L1. Like all of the people that have used ETH L1 in the past, if they've got funds stuck there because the fees are too high, obviously that's an issue. But I'm talking about like the next hundreds of millions, billions of users that are coming into this ecosystem. And that's also what the old L1 fans are talking about as well. The new users coming in, they're not going to Ethereum mainnet. They're not going to Ethereum L1, not only because of the gas fees, but also because Ethereum L1 is not going to have all of the apps that these people are going to want to use because they're going to be deployed on L2s. So really, the flow is going to be put money into a centralized exchange, buy ETH, or buy some other token or buy stable coins, withdraw that for a very low fee, if not free, because I think it's all going to be free one day. And withdraw that to whatever chain you want to use, wherever the opportunity is, and then you can bridge from that chain to another chain if you want, if that's something you want to do, or you can just go deposit back into the centralized exchange and bridge out from there, right? There are multiple ways to do this. So these quote-unquote concerns that people have are just, to me, it's not a concern. It is simply something that will be solved and is being solved in real time. It is not something that you look at and be like, oh, okay, well, this is a showstopper. This means the whole modular Ethereum roadmap is crap. Let's abandon it and go back to the monolithic architecture. That's not the case at all. The modular architecture, I have never been more confident in as being the proper way to scale a blockchain. And I bet you, like, I'm not going to bet you guys real money, obviously, but like I stake my reputation on this. I stake everything that I am on this, that monolithic chains will all pivot to being modular chains. Every single one of them. There is no way in the long term that a monolithic chain will be able to compete with the modular chains. And also they're not just on the competition front, but also on the fact that the sustainability front, the efficiency front, and the fee front, guys. Like, I'm going to talk about this in a sec because I've got something to talk about from Immutable here. But any monolithic chain that says that they can have cheap fees forever is lying to you. Like that's a narrative. That's not reality. We've already seen fees go up on these chains when they get demand. All right. So if we take all of that together, that's why I'm putting my kind of reputation on this and staking it here. Someone can remind me of this video and like, let's give it some time. Obviously, it's going to take the long term here, but let's give it like 5 years. I'm happy to revisit this in 5 years if someone remembers to remind me in 5 years on the like 1,000 and something refuel. And we'll see if I was right or not. I am very confident that I'm going to be right here. I'm very confident that pretty much all the activity is going to be happening on the modular chains, and I'm very confident that Ethereum is going to be at the center of that. Nothing has changed that for me over the past year, especially. I don't think that that the modular roadmap is dead or anything like that. I think it's stronger than ever. Now, as I said, I did want to talk about the fee thing. So Immutable zkEVM today announced that it's 0 fees now on the Immutable zkEVM. That's right. Not 1 cent fees, not a fraction of a cent fees, literally 0. So they say here, we are proud to announce that Immutable zkEVM and Immutable Passport will be capable of eliminating gas fees for all players. All games and marketplaces on Immutable zkEVM will be able to seamlessly sponsor gas fees for Immutable Passport users with no disruption. I told you guys this was going to happen, right? I told you guys this months ago that this is the end game here. The users are never going to see these fees. They're not going to know what gas fees are. It's all going to be covered by the actual chains themselves, by the products themselves, by the apps themselves. They're going to sponsor or basically abstract away these gas fees. And it's going to be 0 for the end user. And of course, these L2s are still going to be paying fees to Ethereum L1 in order to secure themselves and in order to post their data there if they want to. They can post it off chain too, but obviously, if you want to be as secure as possible, you post it on chain here. But this is the future, and layer ones cannot offer this. I mean, they can for a short while if they want, but they cannot offer this in a sustainable manner, in a perpetually sustainable manner. Layer 2s can, and they will, and you bet your ass that all of the gas fees are going to 0 for the end user over time. So that's, again, why I'm saying that the low fee narrative, or that the monolithic chains love to spout, is not a sustainable thing, and will be changed over time. And the narrative around that will change over time. But yeah, you can go check out this announcement from Immutable yourself if you would like to. And just a reminder that Immutable's zkEVM is built using Polygon's technology, which means Immutable zkEVM will be interoperable with all of the other Polygon chains as well, because Polygon has their awesome interop layer for unified liquidity there. It's all coming together, guys. Like, as I said, the modular roadmap has never been stronger for Ethereum. The L2s have never been stronger, and we just keep kicking goals every day on this front. All right, speaking of L2s, Liam here put a tweet out where he said, "This is why scaling Ethereum with L2s works so well. With an OP chain, Coinbase and their users get the best of all worlds, leverage their world-class BD team and brand, benefit from optimism, governance, and shared upgrades, inherit security, and bridge assets from Ethereum." And this was quote tweeting Brian talking about the project Diamond that I spoke about on yesterday's refuel about tokenizing real world assets and putting them on the Base chain. Obviously, Base is built on the OP stack. And Liam just hits it out of the park here. By Coinbase having their own chain, they can bring things onto their own chain by using their BD efforts, right? Their BD team. They are benefiting from the entire optimism kind of governance stack. And they're also benefiting from inheriting security and bridge assets from Ethereum, which brings liquidity there, and also brings mind share and kind of like social legitimacy and stuff like that, which is very important. So just another kind of really important point around L2s from Liam here. All right, so I've spoken about Fluent a few times on the refuel before. They're basically building a zkWASM L2 for Ethereum, so something different to the normal zkEVMs that we've seen out there, trying to basically open up blockchain development to more developers at layer 2 here. Well, today they announced that the private testnet release of Fluent's zkWASM L2 has now launched. And you can check out the details in this blog post, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. They actually have a bunch of launch partners as well. So it's not just them launching without anything on there. They've got a bunch of launch partners here, and I hadn't heard of any of these projects. So very, very cool to see that there's new projects, new teams working on building things in a new environment here. So you can go check this out. As I said, I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And you can also join the early builders program by reaching out as well. So you can go check that out too there. But yeah, I'm very excited about Fluent, guys. I think that anything that is trying to do more than just what the EVM does is super exciting, and I think that the EVM is fine, it's great, it's going to be dominant for the foreseeable future, but we really do need to make sure that we aren't just EVM, right? Ethereum is more than the EVM. Ethereum can be WASM, Ethereum can be like the SVM, which I'll talk about in a sec. Ethereum can really host anything because of the L2 roadmap, and that was always to me, the most elegant thing about the Ethereum L2 roadmap is that we get to open Ethereum up to so many different ways of doing things and so many more builders than we would by just having Ethereum L1 because you would just get access to the EVM, right? You wouldn't get access to anything else, and it would be quite a limited development environment in that sense. But anyway, you can go check out this blog post. We'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, speaking of non-EVM L2s, Eclipse is one that's been getting a lot of attention over the last few months because they are building a SVM or Solana virtual machine based L2 on Ethereum. Now, I talked about this when it was originally kind of announced, I think a few months ago, or basically it had been around for a little while, but they kind of like announced themselves properly. But the Eclipse testnet is also live today, which you can obviously check out the blog post for and check out the documents for. And they've got a thread here explaining what this is and everything. So yeah, this is all really exciting, guys. Like, it's all coming to market now, right? All of these non-EVM L2s. You have Starknet that's been live for a while. Now you have Fluent live and on testnet, I should say. You have Eclipse live on testnet and a bunch of others. I mean, I think there's a couple more that I might be forgetting now. I'm just going to look on L2 Beat here. Most of them are obviously still EVM, but we're just getting more and more of these non-EVM chains coming up. Obviously, Arbitrum has their stylus thing, which people are going to start building Arbitrum chains using that. And as I just said, we're going to open up Ethereum development to millions, tens of millions more developers than we've had in the past, because obviously most developers don't know Solidity, but they know other languages. And also, Eclipse is opening up Ethereum development to Solana developers. So people who have Solana apps or build Solana apps on Solana L1, what they can do is they can easily port their app to Eclipse L2 and obviously tap into the Ethereum ecosystem doing that. And this goes back to what I've been saying for a while now, guys, that for the end user, this stuff's going to be abstracted away completely. They're not going to really know what chain they're on, but the chains that win are going to be the ones that offer the best development environments. They're going to be the ones that have the best apps on there. They're going to be the ones that have the best UX and the most liquidity. And Ethereum has that already, and it continues to grow. I mean, just the L2 TVL, like collectively, is 16 billion. That is more than all of the other L1 chains pretty much combined, I think, in TVL. And I know, like, TVL is an imperfect metric, but you're just looking at the the orders of magnitude difference here and how many users we still have to onboard. And I think a lot of them are going to come into the L2 space. And I do think they're going to be using not just EVM stuff, but also non-EVM stuff as well. Anyway, I'm ranting again. You can go check out the Eclipse testnet announcement. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, Espresso Systems has announced today that they are sunsetting the Cortado testnet because they're fully focused on releasing the Espresso Sequence's next testnet, which is Gibraltar, in January. So there is an update here about this, which you can read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But just a refresher, Espresso are building a bunch of different things in the ecosystem, but right now they're focused on building a shared sequencer for the L2s out there. So definitely one project to keep an eye on, but just wanted to give you guys an update that Cortado testnet is now being sunset in favor of Gibraltar, a new testnet called Gibraltar, which will be launching in January. So yeah, I'll link this thread in the YouTube description below, and you can go check that out for yourself. All right, I did mention yesterday that Coinbase has a new kind of feature where you can basically send USDC for free, but now you can buy USDC without Coinbase fees anywhere Coinbase Pay is available and send it globally with no fees on Base, Arbitrum, Avalanche, Optimism, and Polygon. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, guys, about the end game, the end state for these for gas fees is basically they're either abstracted away or built into the order, or they're just like not there at all, right? And they're sponsored in some way, they're paid for by some other party. Like, there is no way that we can scale to end users by requiring them to pay any fees. You know what's better than a fraction of a cent? Free, because that is just a huge UX boon. But at the same time, I would also say that I think that there's not that much of a difference for the marginal everyday user, just for the regular user, of between like 1 cent and a fraction of a cent. I really don't think there's much of a difference there, right? But the thing is that because there's not much of a difference there, let's just make them free anyway, if we can. And then we don't have to worry about this anymore. Yes, Ethereum L1 gas fees are probably always going to be high. They're never going to be free, that's for sure. But most users, except, you know, the whales and the people who can afford it, are not going to be on L1. That is the design of Ethereum. I'm preaching to the choir, but that's how it's going to be going forward there. But yeah, you can go check out this from Coinbase. If you have a Coinbase account, if you're using Coinbase Wallet, go check that out on your phone or on your desktop. All right, just the last tweet I wanted to talk about today was from DC Investor, where he said, haven't heard anyone say, but ETH has no supply cap in a long time. This is a common complaint pre-2021. More people now starting to understand how the burn works. Goal is not to shrink ETH supply dramatically, but to keep it from growing unchecked, and it's working. And then I replied saying, the elegance of Ethereum's monetary policy design is something that you only truly understand once you let go of Bitcoin maxi dogma around supply caps. Ethereum is the only economically sustainable blockchain, and second place isn't even close. Second place really isn't close, guys, like at all. There is nothing that comes even remotely close to Ethereum in terms of economic sustainability as a network. But I do want to focus on what DC said here about that line about how people were going on, oh, ETH has no supply cap, you know, there's infinite ETH out there, blah, blah, blah. This was a really, really popular narrative pre-2021. But you know why it stopped in 2021? And especially in 2022 after the merge, because we had EIP 1559 get implemented, and now we've been net deflationary since the merge, and it's really down only. So as I described the other day, not only do we get to pay stakers with a perpetual issuance as part of the consensus layer rewards, but we also pay them out of the fees and the tips from the fees and the MEV. But at the same time, we're burning more ETH than we're issuing because Ethereum is such Ethereum block space, Ethereum L1 block space is so coveted that people are willing to pay those fees on the network. We are burning more ETH than we're issuing, to the point where we're so deflationary now that the ETH supply has effectively not just a cap on it, but a reduction in ETH supply. And that is something that no other network can claim to have, to the extent that Ethereum has it. And the funny thing is, even Bitcoin with their supply cap is going to be more inflationary than ETH forever, basically. If this deflation it stays on Ethereum, technically Ethereum will be more deflationary than Bitcoin. Even when Bitcoin gets to 2140, which is like where it becomes basically negligible in terms of how much BTC is being issued, it never actually goes to zero. There is always some amount of BTC that's being issued, right? This is if Bitcoin lasts that long. I mean, I have a whole other thing about that. But if Ethereum is still deflationary at that point, right? I mean, obviously there's big ifs here and things like that, but just for the sake of argument here, it would technically be more deflationary than Bitcoin forever here. But it has been for a very long time. And if you go to the Ultrasound Money website, you can actually compare this, and it's kind of fun to compare it because a lot of the ETH has no supply cap stuff came from Bitcoin Maximalist. So to see this, like if you go since the merge here, and then you click BTC on the Ultrasound Money website, you can actually see what the chart looks like. BTC, since the merge, has been issuing its normal 1.7% issuance, right? Which will obviously be halved in April of next year. But ETH is negative 0.21% issuance. And if we do ETH proof of work, we can actually see that if we didn't merge, we would have still been issuing 3.16% as proof of work here. So obviously not deflationary at all and much higher than Bitcoin. But because we went to proof of stake and it's a much more economically efficient system, and because we're burning more ETH than we're issuing, we are now net deflationary, and the chart just looks amazing. We're still at the lowest supply of ETH since the merge here, guys. If the burn keeps up like this, eventually it gets to the point where we get to under 100 million ETH or something like that. It's 120 million right now, go under 100 million. And the craziest thing is that if we do get to that future where essentially layer 1 is still very expensive, but end users aren't on there, it's just the layer 2's basically paying to use layer 1, and there's whales on there, and it's basically that global settlement layer, and let's just say we're burning hundreds of millions of dollars of fees per day, there is a reality where the ETH supply basically goes back to what it was before proof of work mining started. And I think the supply was 70 million or something like that. There was obviously the pre-sale and what was allocated to the foundation. So there is a reality where that happens. Yes, it's probably not going to happen for a long time, but could you imagine that? How fun it would be in I don't know how many years it would take, maybe 50 years or something like that, maybe less, who knows, right? But it'd be funny to see that and be like, wow, we basically erased the entire proof of work era in terms of supply that was issued. But I think marginally, it doesn't really matter on kind of like that scale. I think just generally by burning ETH, by having a net deflationary thing, it's good for narrative, it's good for price as well. I know that people kind of get frustrated because ETH's price isn't going up as fast as other things, but I explained the other day why that's the case. But also at the same time, I explained how ETH burn and ETH's issuance reduction from the merge and ETH's move to proof of stake plays out more on the downside than it does on the upside. It makes ETH a much stronger asset on the downside, which is what you should want, guys, because if you are someone that's planning to be in this for a long time, or planning to be in crypto for a long time, and you're a long-term investor and you want to potentially hold ETH for decades to come as part of just your well-rounded portfolio allocation, then you should want ETH to be an asset that performs well in downturns, because an asset that performs well in upturns may only perform well in that upturn, and then once a downturn comes along, it goes down 95+%. And it doesn't really come back up. Maybe it comes back up a little bit, but then continues down. And that's just against USD. I'm not talking about against ETH here. So when you look at it like that, yeah, that's the way I look at it. It just buoys ETH's value because we have these strong fundamentals that are backing it up there. But anyway, enough ranting about ETH there, enough bullish ranting about ETH, I should say. I think that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.